Hello, everybody. Welcome to Amazing You. I am your host. My name is Dr. Ranithanacoody. I am a certified clinical hypnotherapist using rapid transformational therapy. I am a life and relationship coach, breathwork coach, astrologer, and Lifeforce compassion practitioner. And today I have the great pleasure to introduce you to the beautiful Trina Serrecchia, who is a trauma-informed transformational self-mastery and resilience coach in the entrepreneurial and leadership space. Trina is also the founder of the Coaching Business Summit and the host of the Field Guide to Awesome podcast. Welcome, Trina, to Amazing You.
Rani, thank you so much for having me.
It's a great pleasure, Trina. Thank you for you taking the time to speak to the audience today.
It's my absolute pleasure. And I
So
hope that my story can help people.
I am sure it will help a lot and inspire a lot of people. So let us get started with the first question. So tell us briefly about your story, Trina. How
Wow.
did you get started into this area of coaching? Where did that emerge? Where did that has its root from?
Well, it has its roots in how I grew up. I
Okay.
grew up as a feral Gen X child, and into a family of entrepreneurs. So
Right.
there were entrepreneurs in my entire family. And one of the challenges was that the men were very successful, but the women, they didn't have as much success as they
Okay.
wanted. Yeah.
Mhm.
And at first, I couldn't figure out why. And it was just something that I saw and that I took in.
Yeah.
It was when I came home from college one weekend and was going into my grandparents' house, and I heard this very lively conversation
Okay.
between two men. And these voices I felt like I never heard before. I'm like, who are these people? Who are these men talking?
Yeah.
And I go in, and it was my grandfather
Right.
talking with my male cousin. And I was astounded because I had never heard my grandfather's voice before. He had merely grunted in my general direction. I love my entire family, and I
Yes.
loved him, and I love him. But it was a shock because I had never heard his voice before. And it wasn't until years later, because I had seen the women in entrepreneurship, and I'm saying, like, I'm not going to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
That um, because I had seen the women not have success. But it wasn't until later on, when I just started creating businesses for myself,
Right.
that it occurred to me why the women weren't successful. It was because they never got the guidance, the mentorship, the support. They were expected to do it all on their own, plus raise a family, plus, keep house, raise kids.
Yes.
And so that was really formative for me, because as a feral Gen X kid, I didn't get guidance. I didn't get support, right? I had to figure things out for myself.
Yes.
And it was just something that I did. And by figuring things out for myself, I think one of the things that you and I spoke about earlier was a lot about validation and internal versus external validation.
Yeah.
I never had the external validation except for be pretty, be
Okay.
cute, be
Mm.
quiet, right? And so internally, I knew that I was meant for more, and
Okay.
I had no idea what it was. So, how I grew up with creating that internal validation for myself
Mm.
was following my interests, following the things that fed me,
Yes.
despite family, friends sort of looking at me funny. You're going to do what? You're not going to do that. At the same time, I'm saying, Look around. I am actually doing it. You're telling me I'm not going to do it or I'm not going to be able to do it as I am doing it. And so I had to really develop a lot of internal self validation. I and at the same time, I really felt a lot of um, sadness. I think loss
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
something that I'd seen, like the males in my family get, like the support and the validation. You're doing great, and so I sort of turned my endeavors
Yes.
into like, yes, like this, looks like success for me. This looks like fun for me. And so those were the self validation. That was the intrinsic motivation that I had that moved me forward. And so that led to me becoming very independent and
Mm.
doing things on my own. And so um, becoming a massage therapist,
Okay.
um,
So is
becoming a
that how you
copywriter.
started? Is that the first job that you started as an entrepreneur?
Well, the very first job that I had as an entrepreneur was probably around the age of 10. And
Okay.
I was creating, it's so funny. I made brooms out of weeds and sticks and tried
Okay.
selling them on the side of the road during rush hour.
Wow.
However, I lived in the woods and rush hour was 3 cars a day.
Okay. But that was entrepreneurial for a child at that age to be at by the side of the road and trying to sell something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I got a degree in psychology pretty
Okay.
much to figure out that I'm not the crazy one.
Right.
And and so from that I had a really great understanding of people and how people thought. And so I worked in that field for a while in the
Okay.
field of psych with traumatic brain injury, developmental disabilities, and from there I took a weekend workshop in massage and with a friend, and I said, "You mean I can do that and get paid?" That was thrilling for me because I loved everything about massage therapy.
Okay.
And so from there, I did massage therapy for several years.
Okay.
And during that time, I was rear-ended. So in 2003, it was 2003, I was getting a massage myself, rolled over on the table, ruptured a disc on my neck. It was nothing my massage therapist did to me,
Mm.
but I ruptured a disc in my neck. And so that led to my right arm being paralyzed
Wow.
briefly.
Mm.
And so I had to have surgery. My head is screwed on tight, metal plate, 4 screws.
Okay.
But from that, I realized I had to change how I made my living because I couldn't do the physical labor. Um, I knew that wasn't a long term option for me,
Mm.
and that led to a little bit of a identity crisis because I had fully self identified
Right.
as who I was as a massage therapist because
Okay.
everybody loved me.
Mm.
Everybody loved me, and I loved everything about massage. Um, and so from I still was teaching massage. I taught at the college level. I created a year-long certification program for other massage therapists.
Okay.
Um, but I knew that I needed to find something else.
Wow.
And yeah. And so the identity crisis really put me in a spin,
Mm.
really put me in a spin. And so I learned how to be a phlebotomist. Then I found out how much phlebotomists got paid. I'd done that, something like that once before in the early 90s, got trained as an EMT, realized how much they got paid. And that was the time of when AIDS first came out,
Okay.
bloodborne pathogens. And I didn't have the courage to deal with copious amounts of blood
Right.
and the risk of being cut.
Mhm.
I just didn't have that courage at that time. And plus, they were getting paid like $7 an hour, which was
Mhm.
not sufficient
Very
for
little it is. Yes.
for the risk. And so throughout all of this time working on like my own internal validation
Yeah.
was key. And so then I got into building parts of the electronic medical record, because that was the one thing that I got into, was building um, with computers for the hospital systems across the country.
Okay.
And I loved that. I loved sharing my knowledge with people, um, and creating systems that would help save lives.
Mm.
But in healthcare, and I'm sure this must be true internationally, but in the US, burnout is built in to the healthcare system.
Yes.
And as a consultant, as I was traveling, I was kind of insulated from the burnout, but I saw it all around me.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was a way. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew that there was a way that I could um, make a bigger difference,
Mm.
help more people,
Mm.
and a more lasting change
Mm.
than what I was doing then. And so during that time, I had been obsessed with travel blogs,
Okay.
and people who were living the location independent lifestyle. And um, back when I had my um, identity crisis,
Yeah.
I I felt like I tried everything and nothing was working. So I sort of gave up, but not like surrendered to it. I surrendered to the knowledge that what I was doing wasn't working, because I'm not a quitter. And I know that the people who watch your podcast are not quitters either. If they if they were, they wouldn't be watching,
Yes,
right?
that's true.
And yeah. And so it was more of a surrender to knowing what wasn't working,
Yeah.
and allowing myself to slow down so I could speed up. And sometimes when you're pushing the noodle instead of pushing the needle,
Yeah.
it's important to slow down, do some lessons learned in your own life, like, hey, what have I been doing all of this time?
Yeah.
It was working for a period of time and now it has stopped working. How do I need to shift to level up?
Yeah.
Right. And so it was during that time that I decided to take a little over a year off for a little mini retirement
Okay.
slash sabbatical. And and I'd seen what I had accomplished in such a short amount of time. I went from making very little to quadrupling my income, being paid to travel, being paid a lot of money to do
Mhm.
work that was really interesting and that was impactful, and working with amazing people.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take that a step further. And so
Yes.
again,
Sorry, I
I,
would stop you just to share something. Sorry,
yeah,
Tina. When you
no, no
said,
problem.
when you said that you took that break, that mini break, when you were facing that identity crisis, I think it's a really brave step to do,
Yeah.
because a lot of people, when they are at that in that situation, facing that identity crisis, they get frustrated with
Oh,
themselves, they get
yes.
angry with themselves, and things doesn't improve. So, but if they take a step back, like you said, what you did, and then reflect, and I think that's very, very important, not to keep pushing ourselves in something that we don't want to do.
Yeah. And I do have to admit, there was that anger,
Right.
that there was that frustration, there
Yes.
was that
Mm-hmm.
almost a self punishment,
Yeah.
punishing myself,
Mm-hmm.
because look, I'd done all this work. What am I, stupid? Am I? incapable, you
Mm.
know, all of this stuff. Like, who am I
Yes.
now? What worth do I have as a
Mm.
human if I can't do these things? That's where I found my self-worth,
Mm.
right? And all of a sudden that was gone, and now it took all of my self-worth with it.
Mm.
And so I think that was really the start of me trying to find intrinsic self-worth, that it's okay for me to be who I am
Yeah,
as I am, and I am enough
absolutely.
as I am. I
Mm.
don't need to do or be anything more to have value.
Accept who you are
Yes.
in that present moment.
Yes. Yeah. And that was a lot of self awareness
Mm.
that had to happen there.
Yes.
Self forgiveness.
Yes.
Forgiveness is not for anybody else. It is
Yeah.
for our own benefit.
Yes.
And so I think so many, especially women, tend to forgive, you know, family members and people who did them wrong. It's like, I forgive you, but do you really? Is that niggling pain and regret
Mm.
and wounding still there? If it is there, then you're mentally forgiving them, but you're not
Yeah.
emotionally forgiving them. The tug is still there. And
Mm.
so, and that even goes for ourselves, you
Yes.
know, saying
Yeah.
affirmations like it's okay, you know, I'm good enough.
Yes.
Just saying the words is not sufficient. It's the start.
Yes, it is the beginning.
It is the beginning.
Mm.
And but when we say like I am good enough, it is only when your true subconscious beliefs are in line with that, along with your physical experience, your visceral body felt experience
Mm.
believes that you are enough, that it becomes true, that it becomes true.
Yeah.
And so um, and this is what I'd learned over all of these years.
Mm.
And so I went on, um, I traveled with a backpack for 6 months
Okay.
through Central America, Europe, Southeast Asia, had an amazing experience. But I think one of the most profound things that I learned during that experience, because I thought I
Yes.
was going to like, I'm going to go, I'm going to figure out what my next steps are and all
Yes.
of that. And when I got back, I realized what actually happened was I was learning
Mhm.
deep presence, and that is being very present in the moment,
Okay.
in the now,
Right.
instead of worrying about the past,
Yes.
regretting the past, or worrying about the future and trying to make sure that I'm safe. And that was a second thing that I learned through the travels. It became much clearer during those travels because I was very present with it, that I was also learning to be safe,
Yes.
because we can't grow, we can't learn, we can't make real lasting change unless our nervous system feels safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And so when I returned, I took another contract just to see if I could, because I'm
Okay.
not a quitter.
Yes.
And to see if I could, and to see if I was really done with consulting. Check and check. I was done. And from there, I explored copywriting.
Okay.
And one of the cool things about copywriting is that you're not writing to inform, you're writing to be understood. And that was a communication um, golden nugget, because you're not just
Okay.
writing information, you're writing so that the people that you are reaching out to understand. You're using their language. Yeah.
Yes.
And I enjoyed that process, created a great little business, was brought on to a consulting firm to be the manager of RFPs and content. But I always had the the need to be self-employed. I always wanted
Okay.
to build my own castle, to build my own legacy.
Yes.
And so it was during that time when I was doing copywriting, I was still doing networking, and
Okay.
I met a woman who was an executive coach. And
Right.
I said, "Let me take you for some coffee because I need to pick your brain. What is this coaching thing?" Because
So
earlier
was it the first time you heard about coaching?
it wasn't. I had heard
Oh,
about coaching when I was reading the
okay.
travel blogs before I
Okay.
went on my trip, and
Okay.
there were people called coaches,
Right.
and people paid them to
Yes.
talk to them, and I'm like, I could not figure out what that was.
Okay.
I was like, what is this coaching thing? I have no I could not even conceptualize it.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why when I met this executive coach and I invited her to coffee,
Right.
I interrogated her. I was like, what is it that you do? What is coaching? And as she told me each of the things that she did, I was
Mhm.
taking them off. I'm like, I do that. I
Okay.
do that. I do that. I do that. Holy crap. Apparently, I was meant to be a coach. And so then I signed up for the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, which is IPEC, and learned the names for all the things that I did, learned why the things that I did worked.
Mhm.
Oh God, it was such a thrilling experience. And so when I graduated and I started my own business,
Mhm. Yes.
that's when things went a little wonky. And here's
Okay.
why.
Yes. Tell us more about that, Trina.
Yeah, because if you remember back, I had always wanted the mentorship, I had always wanted the guidance, but I
Yes.
never got it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was like a wounding inside, like deep,
Yes.
in my interstitial spaces, the
Mm-hmm.
spaces between my cells, like, it sort of settled there. I've always wanted it, but I never got it. So I had to create it
Mm-hmm.
for myself.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, in the coaching space, it's an entirely different ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
There was an avalanche of other coaches, other gurus, other amazing business owners who said,
Yes.
let me help you.
Yeah.
Let me guide you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you how to create a business, because coaching is very different from the business of coaching.
Yes.
Let me tell you how to create your business. And I was, oh, you want to help me? Me? And that was the little baby Trina, the little girl
Mhm.
Trina who just yearned for that support, for that guidance.
Yes.
And you want to help me? And I inhaled and just took it all in. And, sometimes when we learn things, they sort of lay across the top of everything that we've done before. And in this case, it didn't lay like a strata over the top. It filled in all of the little chinks and wounded places.
Yeah. So who has been in that area of coaching, that field of coaching, the most influential person in you that has influenced your life and why?
Hmm. Perhaps I think Tony Robbins,
Okay.
in the field of coaching itself.
Right.
Business wise, there were many. James Wedmore has a really great um, Mind Your Business podcast, which is awesome.
Okay.
But I think one of the things that I found that by inhaling and integrating the help and support that I had yearned for years
Yes.
was that all of a sudden I started to doubt myself.
Okay.
because I was looking for validation outside of myself
Right.
in those cases.
Mhm.
And so I would talk to a guru, to someone that I really greatly admired. And I'm not saying that any of their coaching, any of their uh, roadmaps don't work. Everything works. Everything you can Google how to do things. Everything
Yes.
works. But it wasn't working for me.
Right.
And it wasn't working for me.
Why
And
do you think
so
it wasn't working for you, Trina?
I think mostly because I was all of a sudden looking for guidance outside of myself.
Right. Mm.
Outside of myself, because I'm used to learning how to do things
Yes.
on my own, pushing buttons, breaking stuff, and
Yeah.
learning how to fix it. And that was pretty much how I evolved, is like just pushing buttons, trying things, seeing if it filled me up, if
Yeah.
it worked. If it didn't and I broke it, then I learned how to fix it. And learning how to fix things, then you learn more of how things work.
Yes.
Um, so technology is not difficult for me. Systems are not difficult for me. Processes, um, all of those things, I love to learn how they work so that it becomes, very easy to integrate it in whatever I'm doing. Um, but it was the validation all of a sudden that, you know, should I work with this kind of client? Should I work with that kind of client? It's like, oh no, you can't work with that kind of client and you have to structure things this way. But when they were telling me how to coach and who to
Yes.
coach, all of a sudden, like I took their advice because, well, they must know, because they're much further along than I was at the time, but it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like alignment. And when I talk about alignment, it's when your your nervous system is aligned with your emotions and your beliefs. And it wasn't feeling aligned. My nervous system was like, no, but that's not what I want to do. I don't want to teach, because a lot of coaching now has turned into courses and teaching,
Yes.
um
What
and
do you mean? What do you mean, Trina, when you said your nervous system was not aligned? Just to explain to the audience, what is
mm,
this? If
so
you can
when
explain that.
my nervous system wasn't feeling safe,
Okay.
my nervous system, for example,
Are you having
when you're feeling
anxiety?
stressed, when you're feeling like that pit in your stomach,
Mhm.
when you're saying something but like physically you don't feel like it's true,
Right.
um, like your heart may be pounding,
Hmm.
um, it might be hard to talk because your throat is tight, like it's not, like you're not letting yourself speak,
Yes.
um, and also oftentimes too, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Ronnie, is it's amygdala hijack. And it's
Okay.
when, yeah, amygdala hijack, it feels like this fog comes up
Right.
in a moment of stress, like something that you know how to do,
Yes.
and
Yes. I
your
had experience.
stuff,
Yes.
right? And something happens, and you all of a sudden this fog
Yes.
comes up, and this confusion, and you can't make yourself move forward.
Mhm.
And when we also talk about coaching, like blocks, mental blocks,
Yes.
um, and belief blocks, I believe that they're called blocks because they're invisible, but
Yeah.
they feel like a physical wall
Yes.
between you and what you want to accomplish. You
Mhm.
and this, like the seeming super simple task, like writing an email,
Mm.
making a phone call.
Yeah.
You know that, like, all I have to do is dial the numbers, talk to the person, and say words. But for some reason, you can't make yourself do it. And that
Yes.
at its core is, for some reason, you don't feel safe.
Mm.
And your body is not, your nervous system is not going to allow you to do it.
Yeah.
And everything that, all of the things that hold us back are there because at one time they kept us safe.
Yes.
There's all the beliefs that we have are there because at one time they kept us safe.
Absolutely. They protected us from the pain, from the
Mm.
hurt. Yes.
From the pain, from the hurt. And I remember back in the day, I'd be angry at myself. Why can't I do this? Like that damn belief. Why can't I get that awful belief out of my head? And it really wasn't until I learned to give myself self-compassion,
Yes.
and that stemmed from like learning to forgive myself and that self-compassion and really looking at, what is the block?
Yes.
What can't I do? What about trying to do it makes me unsafe? What is the story that I have about this that
Yes.
makes me feel unsafe?
Mm. Yeah.
And it was when I started looking further and further back in my evolutionary experience and my growth as a human being, like into my childhood, and also looking at the women in my family because,
Right.
it didn't start with me.
Mm-hmm.
It started with the women in my family.
Yes. Yeah.
And so finding a place of forgiveness within myself,
Right.
finding a place of self compassion,
Yes.
and slowing down to speed up, because I love gamifying things. I love accomplishing things. I'm very accomplishment and milestone driven by
Right.
things. And so sometimes when I feel like I can't hit that next level, I have to take a look at what got me to where I am now and really dissect it a little bit
Yes.
and see what I need to let go of from my past,
Yes.
and which will free me up and give me a little more space to receive and to lean into the next level that I wish to achieve, to get to.
Yes.
Um, because we all success, we all want success.
Mm.
We all want the feelings surrounding it. We want the accolades. We want the money that comes with it. We want all of those things. But when we think about why we want those things, we want the money to feel
Yes.
safe, to feed our families.
Mm.
Um, we want the accolades because that's just one more way that tells us that we're on the right track. Like,
Yes.
oh, they like what I'm doing. But do you like what you're doing?
Mm.
Are
That's the big
you
question. Yeah.
satisfied? Are
Mm.
you filling your own well so that you can give from your overflow?
Absolutely.
That was one, as I was evolving as a coach and taking a look around me at other coaches, at other entrepreneurs, and even at
Mhm.
leaders. You know, it's challenging because you see them reaching certain levels of success
Yes.
and they have all of the outside trappings of success, air
Yes.
quotes. But when they talk to their friends or when you read their memoir, you realize that they were not happy,
Yeah.
that they were inwardly struggling.
Yes.
And I do believe that you can create success for yourself
Mm.
and enjoy it and have
Yes.
satisfaction with it and
Yes.
create even more success and enjoy the entire journey. It doesn't have to be a journey of struggle.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't have to be a journey of struggle. And I think one of the, well, there's three things really that I think help people achieve that. And I think it's very important to start these early,
Okay.
even before you're at the top, what you think is the top now, because there's always a higher mountain. There's always
Yes.
a bigger next step, but we don't know those until we get to the top and we can see further.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to start this stuff now, because it will bring the successes faster, and you will appreciate and enjoy and be able to level up faster and faster. And leveling up, like creating more income, creating more security, um, enjoying reaching more lives, touching more lives.
Yes. And what do you
And
mean by, just for the audience to understand, what do
mhm.
you mean that it's important to work on the stuff now? What is that stuff that we need to work on? Just
the
briefly so
Yeah,
people
the three
understand.
things
Yeah.
is increasing your emotional intelligence,
Okay.
knowing what you feel, why you're feeling it,
Yeah.
and that helps you be more aware of those around you, what they're thinking, what they're feeling.
Yes.
Um, Regulating your nervous system,
Okay.
knowing like when your nervous system feels unsafe, learning how to create a safer feeling nervous system.
Mm.
Because with entrepreneurship, business is hard.
Yes.
It's hard. You're creating something new.
Mm.
You're uncharted territories. You're
Yes.
creating new solutions.
Mm.
And so that's always going to be scary.
Mm.
And so finding ways to regulate your nervous system allows you to do that while feeling safe. Safe in the unknown. Yeah.
Yes.
And the third thing, so
Yes.
the first is regulating your nervous system, regulating regulating your nervous system, increasing your emotional intelligence. And the third thing is learning how to prime yourself for flow.
Okay.
And so with flow, I'm talking, most people think flow, oh, it's just easy and flowing. But neurological flow is very different. Neurological flow, we don't always want to be in flow, because that will lead to mental illness. That's a sign of mental illness. But when we can access flow,
Mm.
it's a very special mental state. It feels like you're high, but it's really that um, your prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain, is quieted down, which also means that it quiets down the inner trash fire thoughts,
Okay.
so that you can get on with um, being more productive. Companies have found that when they can access flow more often, they can increase their productivity by 200 to 500%, which is huge.
Yes.
And it's true productivity, and it's an enjoyable experience, because when you're in flow, time seems to go is more of like a magical experience. It either goes by really fast, or you feel like you have all of the time in the world.
Mm.
um, you are working at the top of your skill level,
Yes.
working and making really amazing um, changes and improvements. Um, and it's really amazing. We all access flow at some point or another in our lives. If you're driving, if you're doing something that you're really interested in, and you look up and you check the time, it's like, oh, only that much time went by, or that much time went by. Look how much I got done. Um, and there are four psychological triggers to flow.
Okay.
And so that is clear focus, clear goals,
Right.
intrinsic immediate feedback,
Yes.
and you're working at the top of your skill level, right? At the tippy top. And the challenge is meeting that. Okay. It's a very um, uh, fine point, because if something
Wow.
starts becoming too easy, you get bored.
Yes.
If it gets to be too hard, you get overwhelmed, and it triggers your nervous system. So it's
Mm.
finding that happy medium.
Thank you. And what
You're
would you
welcome.
say? What would you say today, Trina, to encourage people who are listening and watching this podcast and video, and to those people who are facing some really tough times at this time? What would you like to tell them to encourage
Hmm.
them?
That it gets easier,
Okay.
and also really check where your validation is coming from. Is it coming from outside, or is it coming from within you? Yeah.
And
And
can you,
follow that internal validation, because your opinion, your belief is the only thing that matters when it comes to your own growth and your own life satisfaction.
that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And tell us briefly, Trina, about what you do and how
I
can
am a
the audience reach out to you?
I am a self mastery and resilience coach in
Okay.
the entrepreneurial and leadership space, and I help you regulate your nervous system
Right.
and increase your emotional intelligence and prime yourself for flow so that you can create success after success. Yeah. And you can find me at trinaserrecchia.com. And you can find that in the show notes, I'm sure, because my last name is a challenge to spell. And also on Facebook and LinkedIn.
That is wonderful, Trina. That is amazing all what you shared to the audience today. And I would say thank you so much for you taking your time. I know you are extremely busy with all the things you are doing, but you did find the time to speak to the audience. And I'm very grateful and thankful for your time and grateful for that connection that we made. So thank you, Trina, so much. And I wish you a lot of success in helping many, many, many more people in making a huge impact in people's lives. And I would say thank you to the audience watching, for listening, for subscribing. And I shall see you all very soon. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving, and a great Thanksgiving to you, Trina.
Thank you so much, Rani. And thank you so much for having me on your show. It's an absolute honor to be able to share with your audience.
I thank you very much. Thank you so much, Trina.